Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon of the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host, Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having a lot of fun with all three things, and my column in the Jewish Press talks about how government relates to the Jewish community, or it doesn't, as the case may be. And so with us today, our guest is Assemblyman John McDonald from Cohoes and the River District, you might say.
That's
but
right.
He also represents a good part of Albany, and it goes into Rensselaer County as well, and so a little bit of Saratoga County.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
welcome back to the Jewish
Good to
View.
be back. Good to be back.
So we have to ask what's new with the Assembly this year.
Give us that post-session wrap-up.
Geez, how long do we have?
Yeah, I know, really.
It's interesting because when you really look at the session overall, the end of the session was more like a little bit of a whimper. We did some important things, particularly, obviously in ethics reform in regards to drug addiction, which has been ravaging not only our state but our country. But really the highlight of the whole legislative year was the budget. The budget was what the Democratic Party would say is a good budget. Obviously, we took some actions on minimum wage, eliminated the gap elimination adjustment, a record high increase in education aid, all those that are very important principles to our communities and our constituents.
And one of the major debates that I think you led or you spoke about eloquently was about the opioid drug addiction and the 3-bill package that was passed.
Yeah.
Did you lead the debate on one, or was it just
I
that you
spoke.
Our audience should know that you're a pharmacist, so
Yeah.
you know about drugs over here.
I always say I'm a drug dealing legislator.
That's right.
That's minor compared to some of the other infractions some
The only
members
legal
have had. The
drug
only legal
dealing.
one, exactly.
Yeah, only legal.
One of the key components of the package was a bill that I had sponsored, which dealt with the initial supply of a legal prescription opioid like oxycodone or hydrocodone to limit it to a 7-day supply
Right.
in the first instance that a patient receives it. And the reason behind that is that 75% of every heroin addict starts with a legally prescribed controlled substance. 75%.
Really? I never heard that.
It's remarkable, and this is
interesting,
from the Center for Disease Control, so it's not contrived. And the challenge is that either doctors, nurse practitioners are prescribing them in excessive quantities, or what else is happening, which we don't talk too much about, is people are sharing medications in the household. And I've always been preaching this since day one, whether it's penicillin or whether it's hydrocodone. A medication prescribed for you is for you based on what that prescriber thought. It's not to share it with him. And unfortunately what happens is it only takes 3 days for a person on oxycodone or hydrocodone to become addicted.
Well,
Only 3 days.
Let me ask you something that, sometimes you go to a pharmacist, I got a cold, I don't want to go to a doctor, and they say, here's something
Yeah,
over the counter.
yeah.
I mean, I know it's not your position, but I'm asking you as a pharmacist, not as an assemblyman. But, we've had people on our show because, like Mark's asking you, but he asked a lot of people about it because that is probably one of the top, problems today. And they say, this doctor gave, and legally, like you just said, this oxycodone and this one, and they says, the mother said, on the show, I mean, she was she was a person for an advocate against drug control, because my own son had 4 prescriptions in 3 days. So maybe I'm just thinking the pharmacist saying, hey, obviously if you get here's a prescription, yes sir, yes ma'am, I'm going to fill it. Yeah. But can you say this is too much?
We do, and we do play that role. We play traffic cop many times.
Or you're supposed to play traffic cop.
Yeah, exactly. Now, interestingly enough, part of this package also include the fact that there'll be actually Department of Health with OASIS support, actually additional information provided to patients to reinforce what we already tell them. But honestly, sometimes it just doesn't happen, and I think that's an important process. As I said in the debate, I know this issue firsthand. I still practice pharmacy on a regular basis. I will tell you this, here in the capital region, emergency rooms particularly have started to really cut back on their supply, maybe 8 pills, 10 pills. So we run into that balance. We want to make sure that if Mark truly has a medical condition, he has enough to get through a visit till he sees a regular practitioner. At the same token, we don't want to be fueling the fire of addiction. And so that's been part of this whole process.
Is marijuana a gateway drug?
Marijuana, in my opinion, is a gateway drug. If you talk to law enforcement, they agree with me as well. Not everybody believes in that. Part of the biggest challenge with opioids and heroin is that they're starkly different than cocaine and crack.
Yeah.
Cocaine and crack, as you're using them, they're stimulants, cocaine and crack. The more you use it, your heart starts to beat more, you start to sweat. You get to a point where you want to stop.
I mean, it's getting too much for
Heroin
you, yeah.
and
It's
opioid are
interesting.
depressants. They depress your respiratory system. That's why people are dying. They depress your sensorium. And this is the challenge with drug addiction. That addiction is much worse than
'Cause
crack
you
and
like
cocaine.
feeling, just sit back and
You
it
just
feels
feel like
good,
you're going
yeah.
to sleep. And unfortunately, some people go to sleep permanently.
Mhm.
It's
And that's where
interesting, I never heard
Narcan
that.
comes in. And
That's where Narcan comes in and
Just the
reverses it.
stimulus.
And
just
part of this
okay.
package gives pharmacists the ability to dispense Narcan to any person after a series of screenings. And they're important things, but let's not lose sight of the fact that with Narcan, that's kind of after the process. We need to
Right.
really, that's why I push very, very diligently for restricting the initial supply, because we need to, as I say, cut the serpent off at the head.
Okay, so in
Good
this
point, good
session,
job.
would you rate, I mean, you haven't been through too many sessions,
Yeah, yeah.
but would you rate this as on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 7 or a 6?
I use the letters. It's end of the school year. We usually use the letters, so I give it a B.
A B, okay.
I think overall the budget was very strong. It shows that the state's economy is moving in the right direction, but we're not out of the woods. And I think we've made some improvements in regards to the heroin and drug addiction. But with drug addiction and with ethics reform, it's a journey of 1,000 steps. We just made a few more.
Now, the comptroller came out and, the comptroller DiNapoli issued an audit
Yeah.
for the budget and said, you know, we have like this institutional deficit, and that, you know, it's not huge,
Yeah.
but it's still something, because we're lowering taxes, our receipts are not, tax receipts are
Right.
not coming in as
Yep.
they should.
Yep.
You know, we're not feeding the till as much as we're spending, and we are spending more than,
Well, I mean, right now, we're about $800 million short on receipts and revenue. Well, now, $800 million is probably a lot of money to you and I, but in the total of $153 billion spending plan, it's a figure, and it's not a figure to be ignored. But in that report, the controller also said there's still time this year for those receipts to increase.
right.
But he did say in his latest report that there are some out-year gaps as soon as 17, 18 that we need to be very mindful of. Now, in our budget process, and not many people know this, Ways and Means on our side, and obviously Senate Finance on their side, they have their own finance people
Right.
that do their own,
Budgeting.
unbiased
Yeah.
budgeting and forecasting. And, we still realize that when we put in, for example, certain tax cuts, that we have to add that in as part of the process. But still, they were looking at a 3 or 4 year outlook that was not as negative as what the controller has come up with. So have conditions changed much since the budget was passed? I'd like to think they haven't. Maybe they're being looked at it from a couple different perspectives. The controller, by nature, should look at things in a very fiscally conservative process.
Mhm.
Legislature and the governor sometimes aren't always geared that way. Just because we have so many members, we have so many constituents with wants and needs, and we
Mhm.
try to obviously deliver what we can.
Well, first I want to let people know that the committees that
Yeah.
you've been on, and you could correct if any of this is wrong. You're chair of the subcommittee on effective treatment.
Yep.
Who are you treating? Effective treatment?
With that, basically what that means is that we work with the chair of alcohol and drug abuse.
No, but it's treatment of drugs. It's just not.
No, it's
just
treatment,
like-
it's effective treatment,
treatment
it's treatment
of-
modalities. For example, we, in this heroin and opioid package,
Okay.
one of the aspects that we included is that if a person has been hospitalized for drug addiction, that the insurance plans automatically have to allow them
But
into a 14.
don't you need like 1 or 2 other words on that? To
No,
say
it's kind of,
treatment
it's vague. That way it gives us a lot of,
Oh.
it's vague, so it gives us a lot of room to work with. It's a subcommittee under alcohol and drugs. So
Right,
it's
and
effective
you
treatment
are
of
a
drug
mem- and you are a member of the Alcoholism and Drug Abuse
absolutely.
Committee.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
You're a member of the Insurance Committee, Aging Committee, Cities Committee, Mental Health Committee, and Real Property Taxation
Yep,
Committee.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't leave anything out.
No,
Okay.
actually, it's 6 committees, I think, yeah.
One of the bills that you had sponsored has to deal with requiring safer window coverings in child care
Yeah.
centers, public institutions
Yep.
for children, and certain other facilities.
yep.
Window coverings.
Yeah.
Why was that so important to you?
You know, it's interesting. That bill kind of came to me my first year, and I've been continuing to push that. And another member also has one, so we're kind of at a stalemate. Why I have it is because I represent one of the largest window blind manufacturers in the
what?
capital region. One of the largest window blind manufacturers in the capital region, Comfortex.
Oh,
And a lot of my constituents work there. What I was looking to do was, and it's interesting because what we're trying to do is to require in facilities that we have daycare for our children, in foster apartments, to make sure that we have the safest blinds possible to prevent unnecessary or inappropriate, obviously,
Because on the
strangulations.
cord, the
Yeah,
cords
just
get
strangulations,
around
right. Now, quite honestly, Comfortex has been a very, very helpful, valuable source. They see that what was being proposed was not going to be totally achievable, whereas what I've proposed doesn't really help their business. If anything,
uh-huh.
they wish everything was cordless 110% of the way. I propose something that recommends cordless, but if not, to require the entities to acquire these kits to fix
Yeah.
that are free from the public,
I mean,
Just
Consumer
so I
Public
can-
and Safety
ju-
Commission.
just so
It's
I
a
can-
long-winded answer, to be honest with you.
Just windowed answer?
Yeah, yeah.
Long-windowed answer?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, just
I
so...
just don't understand, how do you have a cordless Venetian blind?
Oh, okay.
Well, there's different types of blinds,
can't
and
do it?
there's some that you can't make, but there are kits to make them safe, so that way if children are around, they don't
All right.
be subject to
Well, I'm
strangulation.
presuming it could also be remote controlled.
A lot can be remote control as
Yeah.
well, but not, let's face it, we're looking at all of New York State. Now, they may be able to afford that in Loudonville, maybe in some parts of
No, I'm
Albany.
saying if you have
Yeah.
it mass-produced, it
Right.
brings down the cost.
True.
So if a lot of
Yeah.
people are using the cordless ones that are remote control, you're not going to have a big, it's going
Right.
to,
What I'm trying to do is,
But
the
but
industry is
yeah.
constantly evolving and
Right,
changing at the
right.
federal level. I'm trying to keep the standards consistent, so that way as they make changes.
So I can look into this more.
Yeah.
Who's the assemblyman who has the competing bill?
Linda Rosenthal is the member who has the competing bill.
Okay.
And we're trying to work through it, because we do want to see, at the end of the day, something happen.
All
And a
right.
matter of fact, I've actually suggested to her that maybe next session she takes my bill and we just get it passed and get it done.
Oh, and you don't have, you're not the prime, she would be the
I am,
prime
the-
sponsor.
she would be the prime
She
sponsor.
would
I
be the
don't-
prime sponsor.
my goal in
So it'd
life
be
is
like
not-
the way you, if you were
Yeah,
Republican,
yeah.
that's what the Republicans do.
Right, right. I personally, to me, in
You don't have
life,
pride of authorship.
I don't need to have that.
Okay.
I want to see results. That's
Okay.
what I want to see.
Okay, well, the
You know
Republicans
what?
say that to me all the time.
Yeah, when I look at the cemetery tombstones, it says nothing about he passed 7 bills.
That's
It doesn't
right.
say anything about it.
Okay, and then you have a bill here that relates to the implementation of an interface between the Department of Motor Vehicles and the state police
Yeah.
to compare information submitted to the Department of
Yeah.
Motor Vehicles to warrants.
Yeah, I've had that bill for a couple of years. I'm going to drop the bill. It's just not going to get through the assembly.
What was it
It
supposed
sounds
to
Well, the
good.
idea, the bottom line is, it's try to encourage the agencies to talk together, so that way law enforcement can do their job.
That sounds good.
It
But
sounds
isn't-
great.
Doesn't this have,
Yeah.
wouldn't this be more effective to be a program bill coming from the governor's office?
Maybe they'll pick it up.
No, but have you approached them?
I know I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't. This is the time of year when you're asking, what do you do during the summer?
You're right.
Besides sitting here and having great interviews, is
Oh,
we
it's a
start
good
to,
time in
we
the summer.
recalculate our bills and look at, do we want to continue this or not, or do we want to farm it out? Now, this bill has been alive for the last 2 or 3 years. It has a Senate sponsor in the majority, so it's not as if it's a pipe dream, right?
Right,
It's,
right.
I usually try to take bills that are going to have majority leadership, unless they're local bills. Senator Breslin and I have actually passed a lot of bills that haven't gotten past that point, but with Senator Marchione and Senator Amador here in the
Right.
Capital Region, we've had some opportunities to also push some of the bills that sometimes wouldn't be on
No,
the
you're
majority.
talking about the summer. What does the Assembly do in the summer? I mean, they close down because it's,
Well, we still have, my office is here in the Capitol. Myself and Pat Fahey and Neil Breslin are the only ones that actually have one office. Everybody else has 2 or 3. So I come to Albany every day regardless. A lot of times I spend most of my time either constituent issues. Now, today was a quiet day. Tomorrow, I have 5 appointments.
Right.
We also work on reviewing our legislation from last year, researching new ideas and things that we want to keep pushing forward. And then, of course, there's always the events. Today was a very great day because we went to the topping off ceremony
Oh, yeah.
at the Albany Capitol Center, which I'm on the board on. It's an exciting day. So it's a mix of everything.
but the Capitol is working itself. I'm not saying, the Assembly Chamber, I should say.
Yeah, the Assembly Chamber, we're not in legislative session. However, Member Fahey and myself gavel in every other day, Monday,
Why is
Wednesday,
that
Friday.
needed for?
And the state constitution requires that the legislature needs to continue for, if it doesn't continue past 3 days, then basically the governor has total control and will control when the assembly or senate
Really?
may come back.
That's interesting.
This way, we kind of control our own destiny. Now, don't get the image of a big wrestling match going on the second floor. It's just part of tradition,
Yeah.
and it's a tradition that actually both Pat and I are honored to continue to do.
But it wasn't it wasn't always like that. In my lifetime, I remember the governor, this was only in the past 20 years or so that this became a tradition.
Yeah, I have a gut feeling. I don't know the history. Jack McInerney probably better at this. There must have been at some point where the legislature wanted to come back and the governor didn't let them.
Or it was the other way. The governor wanted them back and they didn't want to come back. So now they're in control of their own destiny.
There you go.
Whether the governor wanted to call them, if the governor wants to call them back, they could say no.
But just, there's so many things of, different workings, but really legally, then you wouldn't even have to show up. You could take a 6-month
Well, I
vacation.
could, if I want to go to Alaska
they
on a
wouldn't-
cruise, I guess I could, but I like to work.
I'm just saying legally,
Yeah.
you're not obligated to work.
No.
or
I mean,
something.
the reality is, this as elected official, you're not obligated to work one day of
Because
the year if you
that's
don't
always a
want
big
to.
thing, because they say you're getting paid as a
Yeah.
part-time worker.
Yeah.
So you say, all right, for a few months
Right.
I'll be there and I'll take off the other half a year, but really sound like you're a full-time worker.
It's a full-time commitment, but I also, I'm also the kind of guy who gets up at 4:30 every
Right.
morning and goes to bed at 10 o'clock every night. You can get a lot done in those waking hours.
You can, absolutely. So I want to ask you about relating to the suicide prevention bill.
Yeah.
What is that about? What's
The idea behind suicide prevention, when you look at the academic component of education, believe it or not, in high school and in middle school, we don't really have that as part of the curriculum. It's kind of odd. We were shocked. We were looking at it that Regents doesn't really require it.
Okay.
So teachers may choose to do it, but it's not required in the curriculum. So there's like 5 or 6 different members in the assembly, and there's probably 3 or 4 in the Senate. Each has different variations of the bill. This is another one where, I've asked our education chair, Kathy Nolan, to say, Kathy, doesn't need to be my bill.
Right.
We need to do something. We need to somehow find a way to make sure that that's part of the education curriculum.
Well, it was under health when in my school, when we took, how to properly wash our hands or what we
Hygiene.
should do. Hygiene,
Yeah.
right.
I
That's-
think the challenge now, though, is that our children are under so much more of stress, I believe. When you look at social media and the damage that it can do
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
with an individual, we need to be able to provide them the proper tools and acumen to balance themselves and to deal with those stressful situations. Because it's tough. I mean, we knew growing up that taunting was a challenge, but it's usually done in a bathroom. You didn't know too much about it. Now, an inappropriate picture can be sent all over, and it
Right.
can be devastating.
It could be. Why do you want to impose a sales tax on snowmobiles and all-terrain vehicles?
No, we looked at that one. It's kind of like cars. In other words, right now, your sales tax is from, if I remember correctly with the cars, it's from the county that you actually live in. You can
Right.
go to Saratoga County and buy a car. Well, the same thought was with the sales tax, but use it, let that county that you live in be the one that's the benefactor of that sales tax versus maybe Warren County or maybe.
So they're already taxed?
Oh, they're taxed. It's not a new tax.
Oh, it's not,
It's just
because it
basically-
says the imposition of
Yeah.
sales tax
But
on.
but that's always the misleading part of the beginning of the bill.
Well, this is why I ask you.
Yeah, no, this is to basically allow it to be charged based on the county that you live in.
Okay,
Versus
okay.
the county that you're buying from.
Yeah, because otherwise you go to a county with a low tax rate.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
you buy it there.
Exactly,
Because these aren't cheap.
yeah. Interesting enough on that bill, because Dan Steck, Queensbury, Warren
Yeah.
County, good friend, we get along very well.
Good.
So, do you guys have a problem with that? He goes, no, not at all.
All right, give him a call.
Because
Tell him
they-
to come on the show because he doesn't want to come down
Oh,
when it's
okay.
off session. So
Okay, I'll give him a holler.
So that passed? That sounds like, again.
Did not pass, no.
no.
It sounds like all your things are reasonable, everything that you're saying, and you keep on saying no one wants.
We get things passed, but the reality is this: it's just like anything else. There's always a reason why not.
How many two House bills passed this year?
About 600.
600.
Yeah, altogether we did 1,045 votes. Bills passed in the assembly.
1,045.
Passed in the assembly.
Right, passed in the assembly. And 60% of those.
About
Were
60,
two
70% were two house.
Does that shock you? Does that?
No, not at all.
Okay,
Because
so let me ask you this: the impression is, now I know what the answer is, but the impression is that if you're passing all the, 40% of the bills you're passing are one-house bills, it's so that you can brag about it in your newsletters, you know they're not going anywhere, you know that you just want to be on record as saying this, but it's true that, 40% of the time didn't have to be taken up with this. So.
Well, a lot of those bills don't take too much time. Some do, right?
Oh.
Every couple of years.
They take time for research, they take time for unknown amount of time
Right,
in the
well,
back.
what really takes our
backstage.
time, the backstage, you're right. On the floor, which I look at, is sometimes we have debates that are a minute, sometimes the debates that are several hours.
Or consent calendar.
Exactly.
Right.
Carl Hasty is trying to expedite the process to make it more efficient in that aspect, so we can get to the point of having real debates on the floor. But to your point, yes, I think there are some members that say, hey, look at me, I did this bill. Doesn't mean anything if it's a one-house bill. It's not going anywhere. Most constituents don't know that, as you know. The savvy ones do. And then there are also the houses, both houses will pass what's going to be called their principal bills.
Right.
In our house, for example, in the Assembly, obviously the agenda bill, same-sex marriage for years, health care for all are priority bills that the leadership really enjoys and wants to make sure is a principle. And in the Senate, you know darn well, mostly everything's going to be tied towards lowering property taxes. That's just the philosophical parts of the House.
Let me ask you this. You're not on the Labor Committee, but are you pro-labor? Are you pro-business? How do you...
I'm both. I look at things from...
Thank you,
from a
Mr.
couple-
Politician.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
Isn't that
both.
good, right? You didn't give me the third option. I gave it to you. I look at things very candidly. It's interesting because now there's a big push for project labor agreements, and there are times when they really work, and labor will also tell you that they're not worth it
So
sometimes.
what's your position with Honeywell in your district?
Honeywell is upsetting to me because I've grown up next to Green Island my whole life. I know people who've worked there for years. I am not happy with what's going on right now, the way these employees are being treated.
Oh, the way they're being treated,
Yeah.
not the, okay, that's good.
And
Okay,
at
I
the same
wasn't sure.
token, we all know, and labor knows this too, sometimes the economics just don't work out where that industry, whatever industry it may be, just doesn't work again in America. We do get, the talk about China and how they are trying to eat our lunch sometimes can be true. And it depends on many different aspects. That's why there's always got to be a balance.
So are you getting involved to try to mediate
I've been
and make
involved.
peace?
I've been involved. I was not able to attend the actual picket myself because of legislative duties. We were at the last couple days of session, but I've been
But
writing
they're
letters.
still picketing.
Right. I've been writing letters of support, and any events that they invite me to go to, I will be there.
Well, they have an open invitation for you to show up anytime
Okay.
you want.
I will. Usually they try to coordinate the elected officials together so it's more meaningful.
Well, they're not. They're just asking you to go.
It's on the way in today, one of them just,
Yes,
he goes, we got to do something. I said, you let me know what you want to do and I'll be there to help.
yes, that's why
Yeah,
they
yeah,
asked, they
yeah.
wanted me to ask you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, I told him, I'm more than happy to go. I find this one, you got to look at each one individually.
Right.
I don't take the blanket approach, I'm going to show up at every picket line.
No, but
I look at
but
each-
they wanted to know, like,
Right.
where are you on this? So
Yeah, no,
I just-
they knew exactly where I was because I told the organizer where I was. I'm with you, I wish I could be there, but it's the last couple nights of bills.
Right.
I'm going to pass bills.
Right.
So,
Okay. But I mean, since the session
Yeah.
ended, they were
Yeah.
wondering where you were. So
Yeah,
I
well,
just
yeah.
don't forget about them. Is what
I
they-
haven't forgotten about them. They ought to actually check their emails because I've been communicating with them.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. I just want you to stick
Yeah.
up for yourself
Yeah,
and
no,
clear
I'm
the
fine.
air. So
I'm fine.
okay. What do you see coming up for next session, given that next year is
Next year will be interesting. This year is an election year, so obviously
Right.
there's a lot of bouquets and roses thrown out there, I guess you would say. I think we'll actually have a really serious discussion about education funding absent the gap elimination adjustment. Now we can start to talk about really dedicating the resources, particularly to the areas that have been sorely underfunded for years, with the recognition that we still don't have an open checkbook. But I'd like to think that for a person who represents 5 cities, I'm the river guy, but I'm the city guy as
Yeah,
well.
right.
We have a lot of urban needs. We have a lot of challenges. We also have a lot more successes we need to make. So I think you'll see a great focus on that. I think you're going to see more work on heroin and drug addiction. I know
Really?
personally I've got a bill in process now that I've been researching. You talk about what you do over the summer. This would be an interesting note. Do you know that most people who are reversed with Narcan, whether it's in the community or in the ER, that information has to be reported to the Department of Health. within 24 hours.
Mhm.
That's a fact. Do you know that no one does anything with that information? And what I want to see done is that when you go to a doctor and they want to prescribe a controlled substance to you, they have to look up the PNP. It's a registry of you and when you've gotten controlled substances. It's been part of iStop for years. I want a flag added that if a person was recovered for drug addiction, that a flag is in there so that way I can say, Rabbi, you had an
trouble.
overdose, you almost died. We need to start talking about treatment. It's not to prevent you from continuing to get medication. United Healthcare did a study over a 10-year period. 90% of every person reversed that almost died of drug addiction pranced back into their doctor's office within a month and got a prescription for an opioid.
Well, I have to tell you that there was one DA on our show that said, from the Capital District, that said, you know what, if these people want to die, let them die. Because when you revive them, they're only going to go back to their old ways, and they're only going to be a detriment and a burden on our society. And why should we force them to do something that they don't want to do, like living?
Well, you know, if it's my son or daughter, I don't know if I can have that conversation that way, to be honest with you.
I don't know if it's
I-
a
you know,
Jewish
here's-
attitude either.
Well,
You know, you gotta help someone with it. You gotta help them when they gotta help. What they do the next day, you don't know.
The missing link in this whole discussion about drug addiction is this, and I can say this comfortably as a pharmacist, there's no difference with drug addiction than there is with diabetes or hypertension or heart failure. They're diseases. And when we start to finally look at drug addiction as a disease
Right.
versus you being a scourge of society, then and only then will the proper resources be in place that we can take that person who, yeah, maybe some people want to write them off. I'm not at the point of writing people's lives off. That's not my
Okay.
decision.
Well, we're on the Jewish
Um,
view, like I say, and I can tell you that's
Yeah.
the Jewish view also. You know, whatever happens tomorrow, but right now you have a situation to help somebody, you have to help them.
Yeah.
That's
And you mentioned you're a city guy, not just a river guy. You have the cities of Cohoes, Watervliet, Rensselaer, Waterford, and portions of Albany and Troy in your district, and the towns of Green Island.
You're Mr.
and
Capital
North
District over here.
Greenbush.
You're the real
So-
Capital District.
He really is.
I'm
so-
lucky.
Well,
You're lucky.
we're lucky that
Yeah,
you're
we're lucky.
in politics,
Yeah.
because this is like one of the first sessions in 15 years where no one left the session indicted.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But
And we're still moving up in seniority because we have some people retiring and not coming back.
there are 10 assembly
Yeah.
members retiring.
Yeah.
And they just, either they're moving to the Senate, or they're moving to the city
Private sector
council,
or
or
private
they're moving
sector.
to private sector, but they don't, you know, they won't be returning.
Yeah.
And you're about just like 105
Yeah.
on the seniority scale, so you'll be
Out of
below 100.
150 people
Out
should
of-
know how to-
Right.
out of
Here's the
150,
interesting
but
part,
You're going to eclipse that 100 mark.
People
so-
talk about term limits, and it's a discussion worth having, but the reality is, if I'm already through the top third, the bottom third,
Right.
Yeah. How many
term
years
limits
again
are
you've
part of
been there?
life. I've only been there 4 years.
Yeah, so that's really a big
And you already-
turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've
I'll
already made
be-
it through the bottom
You know,
third.
by the time the next term is over, and the New York City elections are up
Yeah.
next year, a lot of members will run for New York City Council. There's a good chance they'll be at the high water mark of 50%.
Well, you know, the Weprin brothers, they switched
Yeah.
a few years ago.
So do the
but
Barons.
The Barons also.
yeah.
And now I think Keith Wright's not going to return.
Right.
But Inez Dickens is going to run for the Assembly, and he's going to run for her council seat.
Yeah.
So I think there's a deal being
So it's
worked out
good
with
to,
that.
just good to note that
Well-
there's a high turnover, you know, without even a
There's a
law
relatively
about
high
it.
turnover.
Well, the New York City Council gets paid more, you don't have to travel as much,
They get member items.
they get member items, and, you know, you just don't
They have
have
larger
as much
staff.
stress.
They have
and
larger staff.
staff, too.
There's something to be said for laying your head on your own pillow every night, and I'm lucky to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I wake up every day and end my day in Cohoes. What happens in between is kind of busy.
And you have 4 children? 5?
Three.
3 children.
Three
Okay,
children,
I
yeah.
gave you one more.
Yeah. Three's
and,
enough.
And they're, what ages?
Freshman in college, and then a sophomore and a freshman in high school.
Cohoes High
1954,
School?
Catholic Central.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What's
in
wrong with
Siena.
the public schools?
Nothing's wrong with the public schools. I'm a byproduct of Catholic education. I
I'm
say it all
just-
the time, I know.
All right, listen, Mark, that
Yes.
I mean, we're out of time.
We are out
We're
of
always
time?
having a good
Goes quick.
time over here.
I always have a good time with John.
All right,
Okay.
good time,
quick.
but we're going to have to ask you again after the next session, of course, to give you an answer for a report card of what's happening.
Absolutely. I gave you a B.
All
That's
right,
right.
well.
Thank you very much.
All right, in any case, you're doing well and continue with good success.
Thank-
Thank you very much.
continued
Thank you for the
success, yes.
opportunity.